Hi, I'm Isaac.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Caleb.
And I'm Ryan, and we are the King's Advocate podcast. We're back for another episode. We want to make a quick disclaimer like we normally do, that we're not scholars or experts or anything. We are just four friends talking about the Bible and trying to learn more. Today we're going to talk a little bit about pretty basic psalm. We're going to talk about Psalms 1. We're going to talk about the whole chapter. It's only 6 verses, but I feel like even the first couple verses are really full of great information that we can take a lot out of. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I think that this book is kind of like it's a whole lot like Proverbs because it's a comparison. It's a if you do this, then this is going to happen, but if you do this, it's you're going to have the complete opposite happen. And so we'll just go right in. We'll jump right in and start reading Psalms 1 and verse 1. It says, "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful." So he gives three scenarios right there that, or three situations, I guess, that are, really good advice on how we should live our life. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. So I want us to discuss that one first. What it means to walk in the counsel of the ungodly versus, walking in the counsel of the godly. And really, all that means is, are we taking advice from people who are godly people, or are we taking advice and following advice from people who are ungodly? There's going to be a big difference in quality and direction of life in those two things, and I think that's what I want us to consider and talk a little bit about first. So, Brandon, Caleb, Isaac, do y'all have anything to add?
Yeah, was it Samuel's son that was to be king, and he told him to go to the advisors for counsel, and instead he went to the advisors, and they told him, be kind to the people, and he went to his friends.
Wasn't that Solomon's son?
Was it?
I think
It was Solomon's son.
Solomon's son. Okay. So, he told them, go to these advisors, and he did, and they told him to be nice to people and to treat them well. And he went to his friends, and his friends said, teach them all a lesson and be really evil and mean to everyone. And he listened to them instead. When he could have listened to the wise, godly counsel, and instead he chose, lower, foolish counsel, and that led him to be a terrible king. And it didn't only affect him, it affected everyone that he was under, the whole nation. So I think that's a pretty good example that we have of exactly what you're talking about.
What happened to him? Didn't he get assassinated or die really young or something like that?
I don't remember. Do you remember, Isaac?
Not off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Yeah, Rehoboam is who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is that the same story that has Jeroboam?
No, Jeroboam is a continuation. Oh yeah, he was the one who lost control of the northern tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great example.
I mean, he was a terrible king, and he was not a good guy. But he was cursed due to Solomon, though. Right? God told him that his line would no longer be continued after his son was king. They would lose the nation.
He told him that he was going to allow him to keep a remnant of the tribes because of David, his father. Mm-hmm. He told that to Solomon. But Rehoboam was really the reason for that because he was such a terrible king. But I mean, his very first act, that's such a great example. I can't believe I didn't think of that. But his very first act was to listen to his friends instead of listen to the people who had served under Solomon and possibly under David as well. Two of the two great kings of Israel. I guess you could say Saul was a great king, but I think David and Solomon were better kings objectively. But he goes and instead of listening to the people he should listen to, he listens to his friends who are just as young and foolish as him, and as a result, he becomes one of the most hated kings and one of the most what's the word? Not oh shoot, I can't think of the word. It's like being famous for a bad reason.
Oh,
Infamous.
what is that word? Infamous, yeah.
Yeah, he became one of the most infamous kings of Israel. So, I mean, the quality of advice that we follow and that we take to heart is really important.
Well, I think because in my Strong's Concordance on my Bible, if I tap on it, it says that word blessed translates to happy. And happiness, and whenever you said, like, he became one of the most hated and infamous kings, that's the opposite of what he could have been if he had chosen to get counsel from the people that were offering him good counsel and wisdom and things like that. He was, I guess, leaving behind a happiness that could come from that, and instead went to something that made him, like you said, hated.
Yeah, and I think we can put some parameters on this. We can say, like, I don't think it really matters if you take advice on where to buy car parts, or where a good place is to look for a lawnmower, or simple mundane stuff like that. I don't think it really matters as much who you take your advice from. But when you're talking about, like, how you should live your life, or difficult situations that you find yourself in and you don't know how to behave, like, I'm not going to probably turn to the people that the people who don't follow God and who I don't know very well. I'm not going to turn to those people. The people that we need to be turning to, the people that we should turn to, are those who we trust, number one. Well, actually, not number one. Those who we trust, yes, but those who follow after God's will, number one.
And those who have been through whatever it is that you're trying to get through.
So it's probably the better idea, instead of doing what Rehoboam did, go to people who have no idea what they're talking about, who are, just about the same age as you and have not been through the experiences that, they need to have to offer wise advice. You go to somebody who's older and wiser and has the same values and has lived the life of a Christian, so that, they can help you understand what you should do to get through the hard situations in your life.
And it doesn't have to be necessarily someone that is just older than you.
Right.
But I completely understand what you're saying. But it can be somebody around your age, or it could, in situations, it could be people that are younger than you. In certain situations, it just depends on that person. But, of course, going to people that have been through what you're trying to get through and seek advice and wisdom from, that's a pretty good idea to go to people that have been through that. And that usually is people that are older than you.
More experience.
Yeah.
Isaac, do you have anything to add to that?
Iron sharpens iron, so sharpens the countenance of a friend. That's the only thing I could really think of to add to that would be, and I can't remember where that is, or if I'm even saying that right, but iron sharpens iron in the same way. Someone who has experience, who's wiser, who is a counselor to you, will be that sharpening tool for you. And sometimes a sharpening tool can be used incorrectly, or the wrong kind of tool can be used, and that just dulls whatever you're trying to sharpen. Which actually, kind of a neat segue a little bit, but not a segue, but like a neat little plug. The Brother Cousins actually talked about this last month when they were talking about knives and blades and things like that. It was one of the concepts they talked about was if you use a sharpening tool incorrectly, or use the wrong one, or you don't know what you're doing, you're going to end up dulling your blade instead of sharpening it. In the same way, you could have a wicked, ungodly counsel, and it does more harm than good.
Yeah, another verse that comes to mind is, I think it's 1 Corinthians 15:33. Evil communications corrupt good manners.
Yeah,
do you have that down?
I have that down. I feel like that's probably one of the most famous verses we use when we talk about who you go to for advice and stuff like that. But it's very true. If we're listening to evil people, or people who are sinners, or people who don't love God and don't know God, we're gonna get advice that most likely leads us to a situation in which we're not respecting God, we're not showing God honor, we're not loving God the way we should, because, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. If we have to be careful about who we listen to, who we take the counsel of, because if somebody gives you advice, unsolicited, it's not necessarily bad for them to give you that advice, but what he's saying here is walketh not. You can hear all the advice in the world, but you have to choose what advice to follow. Because there's going to be times when people encourage you to do something and they give you advice on what to do, but it's our choice, and we have to be the one to discern between what is good godly advice and what is advice that I need to do pretty much the exact opposite of. We have to be the ones to discern that and be the ones to make that decision. That can be kind of tough, but it's important that we do our best to distinguish, because otherwise we're gonna have a harder time in life, and we're gonna have a harder time serving God. And then he goes on to say, standeth not in the way of sinners, which is a different situation, and it's the way I understand it, standing in the way of sinners means I'm not going to frequent the same places that sinners frequent, and obviously there's going to be some caveats to that. I go to work, and I work with a lot of people who are not in the church. In fact, there's not a single one who I work with who is in the church, but I have to go to work because I have to provide for my family. I'm going to go to the grocery store and pick up food so that I can eat. There's probably a lot of people who aren't in the church at the store. There's going to be places that we have to go to sustain our life and to provide for our family and do what we need to do. But I think what he's talking about here is more, where do I spend my extra time? I don't think he's talking necessarily about work fully. I don't think he's talking about the grocery store. I don't think he's talking about that's like school, even places we have to go. He's talking about, where do we choose to spend the time that we have free or extra? Where do we choose to spend that time? Because if we choose to spend that time, in the way of sinners and with sinners, our life is going to naturally be harder. I mean, it's a lot like how we choose not to, we choose not to take the counsel of the ungodly. Or we shouldn't take the counsel of the ungodly, because it's going to lead us to a place we shouldn't be. If we spend a lot of time, all of our extra time, or a decent amount of our extra time, in the way of sinners, with sinners, doing things, that we shouldn't be doing, even if we're there to just spend time with them and not partake in the sinful activities that they may be partaking in, we are still going to find it harder to resist those activities, and we're still going to find it harder to resist sinful behavior, because we're spending all this extra time just so that we can hang out with people who we maybe like, and those people are not good influences for us. Evil communication corrupts good manners, or evil
communication.
Evil communication. Evil communication corrupts good manners. It's true in the advice we take, and it's true in evil conversation. Evil conversation corrupts good manners, right? Because
I'm pretty sure it's...
I'm going to go look, because I got to be sure.
I think that's two
the
different
word
translations.
he uses doesn't actually mean, physical, like... One second, let me go look.
I don't know if y'all heard it. Isaac said it was the difference in translations.
Evil communications, yeah. And
what translation is that?
It's King James.
That's what I used.
So communication just means like companionship or intercourse, like discussions. Mm-hmm. But really, what it means is like the way you live your life. That's essentially what it means.
Who has the biggest influence on you in your life?
It's gonna be the people you spend the most time with.
That's true. But I mean, I can go to work for 8.5, 9 hours a day, and the people at work aren't necessarily my biggest influence.
That's a good point.
Because I'm choosing not to have those ungodly, conversations with them throughout the day. But, I feel like the people that are the biggest influence in my life are the people here at church, or, my best friends, my inner circle, like around myself. And it doesn't have to be necessarily the people that you're at work with or the people that you're at school with, because you have to be with them for a decent part of the day, every single day.
Yeah, that's true.
So you need to, I think a big part of that to kind of counteract that is to find not just like one person or two people, but like a group of people that can be a good influence on your life to kind of counteract that and overcome that.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, we don't really necessarily want to. We don't really necessarily want to spend a lot of time around, or we don't want to let the ungodly people that we spend our time around affect us. We don't like to think of them as influencing us. But the truth is that they will influence us.
Yeah.
If I went to work every single day, 7 days a week, and spent all of my extra time with that group of people, I can say all I want. Well, they're not influencing me. I know that they're ungodly and that I need to live my life the way that God tells me to. They're going to influence me. Whether I like it or not, or whether I say so or not, it's going to happen. I mean, the behavior that we witness and that we are around does influence us in some way, you know. And like you said, Brandon, we have to, I think I guess what I thought of was when you were talking about that is we need to influence them rather than they influence us. Yep. And you know, we can't spend all of our extra time around people who are not going to be good influences. We need to be around people who are going to strengthen us in our faith, because we do have to spend so much time, or a lot of us have to spend so much time around people who are, you know, they're not building us up. They're gonna tear us down, even if they don't, you know, necessarily mean to. Some of them may mean to. Some of them, you know, take great pleasure in trying to, at work. Some of them try to really want me to, you know, drink or cuss or you know, go places that I shouldn't go with them because they think that would be really funny. They think that'd be a great game. And, you know, some of them don't necessarily mean to, but just by their behavior, they're a bad influence. And I have to find a way to not only avoid that as much as I can, but also to counteract that with where I spend my extra time. You know, who I spend my extra time with mainly.
And when you think of that verse, 1 Corinthians 15:33, be not deceived. How it starts that, be not deceived. Because it's very easy, like you said, to think, oh, I can hang out with these people. Yeah, I can go to work with them, and I'll be okay. I won't let them influence me, blah, blah, blah. Be not deceived, because it can absolutely happen, and it will if those people are the biggest influence in our life. Like you said, it says it will corrupt good manners. It doesn't say it might.
Right.
It says it will. And it's the truth. It will.
You know, when...
Isaac, you got me?
Yeah, when...
Sorry, go ahead.
You talk about standing in the path of sinners, I always think of Proverbs 7, when Solomon's talking about this guy that he saw that was going... In verse 6, it says... in verse 8, it said... Let me start in 7. It says, a young man devoid of understanding was passing along the street near her corner, and he took the path to her house. Of course, he's talking about a harlot. He's going not to her house, but he's around her house. And it ends up with him actually being caught up in the lust of it and, you know, indulging in the sin that he should not be indulging in. But the problem was not that he went, the problem started when he was there. And he was there, he was passing along the street, he was near her corner, he took the path to her house. So it started with he stood in that path. He was there, and he had the opportunity. But if he had gone a different way, he would not have had that opportunity. So that's what I think of whenever I think about stands in the path of sinners, is that you don't take that opportunity, you don't take that path.
Yeah, provide no occasion for the flesh. I mean, that's why God. That's why Paul wrote that. You know, that's why God communicates that to us.
Right.
And then the last one that he talks about in that first verse is sitteth not in the seat of the scornful. So I thought this one was a little bit. I wasn't 100% sure what it meant, and I'm still a little foggy on it. Like we said, not scholars, or I'm definitely not. But I think basically what he's talking about here is he's just talking about people who mock things. I mean, that's what the scornful are, is people who mock things, people who make fun of things, people who disdain things. And he says that, you know, blessed is the man who doesn't do that. You know, it's really easy, I think, for us to live lives where we look at other people, or we look at certain situations, and it's easy to make fun of things. I mean, it is. You know, we're not supposed to be those people who just look at, you know, hard situations in life or other people's lives and just make fun of them all the time. I mean, it's easy to do, And it's easy to get in that mindset of I'm just going to mock things that I don't like, or I'm going to mock people I don't like, or I'm just going to mock things, But God doesn't call us to live that kind of life of bitterness, because that's really the kind of life that you're cultivating and you're developing if you're living a life of mocking everything and everyone who you don't agree with. I mean, God doesn't call us to be complainers or backbiters or whisperers. He calls us to deal with the problems that we have, face them, and also to live a life full of, rejoicing and live a life full of hard work, and live a life where even if we do have to do something we don't like, we still do it, and we do it to the best of our ability. Is that kind of the understanding that y'all have of that verse? Because I haven't looked at that part super in depth, but that's kind of the understanding I have.
So in this verse, I think of like when it says walks not in the counsel of ungodly, stands in the path of sinners, sits in the seat of the scornful. So I see that as kind of a progression of, I'm walking by, I'm not really doing it, I'm just walking by. Standing is like, well, I'll stand and watch, I'll stand and like see what's going on. And then sitting is like full on, okay, I'm a part of this now. That's kind of how I see this verse playing out with the ungodly and the sinners and the scornful, is like a slow progression of this is who I am now.
I think that's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
I mean, it makes sense. It goes through it, and like as it goes on, you're beginning to get more corrupted. You're beginning to have more ungodly things come into your life, and it's hurting you for the worse.
Yeah, and we're talking about the, I guess the negative side of this in a way. We're talking about, well, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But really what he's saying in this first verse is, blessed is the man that doesn't do these things. This man is blessed, this man is happy, this man has a better life than somebody who does do these things.
Hey everyone, this is Isaac from the King's Advocate team. Just wanted to let you know that this conversation went a little bit longer than we were expecting, so we're going to have to split it into a 2-part series. So be on the lookout for part 2 when that comes out in a couple weeks. Till then, you can continue listening to other podcasts such as The Brother Cousins, which I was actually a part of not too long ago in the beginning of April. So please go check them out, as well as Scripture In, Scripture Out, Let God Be True, 15 Minutes and a Big Idea, and all those other podcasts. Until then, thank you so much for listening to the King's Advocate podcast.